Honest J. Nowak. Oh yeah. A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Honest J. Nowak once again. Because here, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about codes. Now, it doesn't really matter the kind of codes that you technically use, because at the same time they're known as passwords. Codes and passwords, they're pretty much synonymous when it comes to computing. But in and of itself, I have defined codes, which are arbitrary lists or numerical type of lists, as it would be known more professionally. More people out there happen to typically use passwords instead of codes. Now, numerical codes actually happen to be a bit more difficult to process than actual passwords. When you use words, you happen to have a much better memory at figuring those out in terms of getting access to any of your own social media platforms or any other accounts that you happen to have on the internet. Because compared to arbitrary lists, numerical lists, or other lists that revolve around numbers, it's pretty easy to determine that they are not quite as easy to figure out compared to actual words. Now, letters, of course, have actually been known to really put together some good passwords out there. Whether they be words or if they wouldn't be words, it's really not as difficult as using numbers to create a passcode of any sort. Now, of course, to talk more about codes in general, in terms of coding for the internet and how it had been done back then, because 15 years of innovation in terms of the internet itself and how many different websites began to pop up all over the place, we've been seeing a lot of things out there develop. We've been seeing so many different things out there that have come to know that we've really gotten ourselves a great way of getting ourselves our own information. Many different websites that come around from different publishing companies or different companies out there. Otherwise, we've got ourselves websites of our own. If they are in fact relating to the different types of social media platforms that we typically use, or if there are other ones out there. If they're websites that are based off of certain television networks or gaming attributes out there, like Twitch or even Discord, it's really just a big explanation out there, because that type of coding has become a very important part of our life, especially when it came to development of the internet back then. Coding for it was a pretty big challenge at first, but you know what? We happen to find coding today as a pretty big attribute that many of us take on. We do take on a lot more challenges than that, though. So, one last thing about coding, though, is that other than just simply having yourself a password become more easier than a passcode, and for the fact that coding for the internet, of course, was kind of a tough task to work on, but nowadays we got ourselves lots of different ways to code with the best of technology. I value coding itself, codes in general, as a simplistic way of keeping items safe in actual safes. Now, of course, I do happen to want to upgrade my money box into an actual safe. That's about this big, probably able to hold thousands of dollars in it at once, but no matter what the cost might be, I do happen to really feel that putting in a good code would be as much of a necessity as possible. Because many people out there, they don't really happen to put together good codes enough so people out there can actually break into those safes. I do happen to see that plenty of times. And of course, I guess the main problem with that is that some people happen to be putting codes up on safes where people can watch and then it eventually can figure that out. And people out there happen to do that. So of course having a good passcode is a necessity at this point, a requirement that happens to really be as useful as ever. But the way I see it, it doesn't seem to be very effective. Passwords whether they be voice activated or if they be typed in by hand. I do happen to find those as a much more valuable way of putting it all together. So that's pretty much it about codes. But of course there are going to be a lot more subjects that I will end up touching up on. So please be sure to stay tuned for that, as well as a lot more that'll happen on my channel. But if you want to see more go down on my channel, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.